It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Paige.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Columbia assistant softball coach, Coach Paige Smith. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in college softball?
Yeah, so actually it happened really early in my career. I used to look forward to the camps almost as much as the games. I love sharing the game with people. I loved when people get the aha moment of they finally struggle through something and then they get it, and then just being a part of the process to get there. So it was pretty easy for me to switch over from being an English teacher to being a college softball coach.
What was it like first going to North Iowa?
It was North Idaho College, but I love that you said North Iowa, because when we eventually did go back and coach them to the national championships of junior college, they accidentally gave us the North Iowa banner and the wrong state flag. So it's actually really funny. And there's a whole song that's actually called Idaho's Not Iowa. So it was amazing. I got to go back and I got to give back to the program that gave everything to me. So I had a unique path into playing softball. I didn't play fast pitch until I was a freshman in high school. To have a coach take a chance on me and at a junior college to build a program when she was only in her second year was great. So to get to go back and coach with Don Williams was probably the reason why I'm standing here.
Of course, how was it like getting to go to Campbell University to play softball?
That was a culture shock. I used to give a long speech about how to choose a school. I'm glad that I went there. The reason why I'm in New York City is also because of the connections that I made through my teammates, Kathy Freeney being one of them, who used to coach at Furman. And they're from New York, and they got me connected up here with different schools. And that's why I'm in New York City now. But I will tell you, there is a big difference between the deep south of North Carolina and the very north, Pacific Northwest of North Idaho.
Of course, how was that experience like getting to put on that Campbell jersey?
It was great. I mean, who else gets to say they're a fighting camel? So it's one of the best mascots in the game. So I got to play with some amazing people, and I got to go to university and play Division I ball. And, but despite what you might hear, orange is the new pink.
Throughout your college experience playing, what were some of your biggest accomplishments?
It's kind of funny because I like to say on and off the field. On the field, I think my biggest accomplishments was in every role that I was at, I was always put in a leadership role. So I'm a junior college transfer. I'm very proud to be a junior college transfer. I think it's a path for everybody. And for me, it made sense. I needed 2 years to get the playing experience that everybody else got when they were playing growing up. So, which provided me an opportunity to go to a Division I university, and I got voted captain at the end of only that being one semester in. So I think my biggest accomplishment is to be a captain on a team that was already established, and becoming a defensive specialist. The offensive game, I've had a love-hate relationship with it, which is I like to say I became a good hitting coach because there's not a slump I didn't have.
Of course, getting into college coaching, what was it like getting your first coaching job at your alma mater?
Well, I got right out of school. I went into Lewisburg College for 1 year, and then it was a situation where I was living in the dorms and I was more of an RA than a coach. And so Don called me, and she was talking to her other coaching staff, and she was having a good time. And she said, "What would it take to get you back here to coach with me?" And I said, "If you pay for my master's, I'm there." And so she found a good program through the University of Idaho, where I was able to transfer my Texas women's coaching credits in and get my master's while coaching with my mentor in the game. It was fantastic. And the master's that I got was organizational learning. And the best part about it was our professor and like they allowed us to use the softball team as an organization. I was able to, personality profile test our athletes and try out some different things that I was learning in organizations and systems within our team at a really young age. And then, my claim to fame, my only thing that I've ever done faster than Don Williams was I got my master's 2 years before her, and we started at the same time.
Of course, how is it like going to Lewisburg College and becoming the assistant coach?
I worked for one of the founders of the game, Sheila Renee Cotton. She's brilliant. She probably could still play the game right now. And I think if you look her up, I believe she's, an Olympian at the senior level. She's in two sports. She's the Pat Summitt of junior college softball.
Of course, what was your experience like becoming a head coach for the first time?
I was way too young, and no one had any business giving me a job at 24 as a head coach of 21-year-old. I made a lot of mistakes, and I had an administration that believed in me. So, it might be weird to call your athletic director Mr. Hartwell, but that's what he preferred to go by. And he believed in me. And it was amazing to kind of go through the bumps and be able to sit down in the office and have him say, this is how you need to build who you are. And, the rest, clearly, the game, and the rest is going to take care of itself. And, within 4 seasons of being there, we'd broken the single season win record. We were 3 times out of the first 5 years the best defensive team in the league, and we were going to postseason every single year. So to cap it off, we got really lucky, and we built a $1.2 million softball field on a Division II campus. So, and I'd like to say we did all of that without ever being fully funded. So we were doing more with less.
Of course, how was that experience like, and what did you learn as a head coach to help you for your next job at Seton Hall?
Well, at Adelphi, the only way to become full-time status is you also become an athletic director. So I think that every single coach should probably spend a little bit of time as an admin to understand that although your team is everything when you're on the field, it's not everything with regard to a whole program. So, I got to oversee our volleyball team at Adelphi going to postseason. I got to, I don't want to say be the boss of, but I got to oversee coaches that were 30 years in when I was only 25 years old. I'm sure that they didn't love being called into my office and me telling them, we're having a budgetary meeting and all that great stuff when, they probably balanced their checkbook better than I did. But, it was a great experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I loved the amount of things that I got to oversee. And when I interviewed at the next level, it was actually pretty funny. Pat Lyons at my former school, he sat me down and he said, I think you might be bored here. You were doing a lot there. We're going to have you just coach softball.
Of course, what were some of your accomplishments on the Seton Hall level?
I think that you can divide my career into 2 halves. I'm going to be very honest with you. In the first part, I was really energized and I had great support. And in the first 3 years, we did it. It was crazy. We took a team. I told everybody when I was coaching Division II that the only way I would ever become a Division I coach is if I could take over a program that hadn't won a game in 3 years. At the point that I took over at Seton Hall, they were pretty close. They'd won 3 games in conference play over the course of 3 years. No more than 3 games. No more than 3 games in conference play over the course of 3 straight years. So, I walked into a room where the first thing we had to do was teach women to believe in themselves and that they can compete. And that's what I love. That's my passion. Within the first year, and that was the old Big East. That was a really big Big East with Notre Dame and Louisville. No one not from Louisville can say that correctly, by the way. And South Florida and all these big powerhouses that I'd only seen on TV. Right, growing up in a small town in Idaho, I'm on the field with them and we're competing. And one of the best moments in my young coaching career was after a game at where the University of South Florida came up. The then national team coach Ken Erickson, after the game, came up to me and said, wow, you're doing great things and you deserve to be at postseason this year. And it was awesome to hear that. He was like, we would have prepared differently for you guys, knowing how you guys are playing right now. And that was my first season. And, we did some cool stuff. Within 3 years, we knocked off DePaul on our way to being in the championship game. And I think what happened is after that, I just didn't keep it up. For whatever reason, I didn't keep it up. And one thing I'm learning is that you have to, as a coach at any level, you don't point fingers. So I'm not going to say it was one thing or the other. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say we failed for the second half of my career at Seton Hall, enough that I needed to step away for a little bit.
Of course, how did you take those 14 years as a head coach to help you to come to Columbia to become an assistant coach?
Don will be the first to tell you that when I started my career, I told her I never wanted to be a head coach, ever. I think that I am best when I'm able to connect with the athletes. And there is something about sitting one seat over. You know, it's funny to say I was never going to be a head coach and then to find myself at 24 being one. Life gives you lots of different, curveballs, softball analogy. I think that the ability to be a head coach gives me a better chance to anticipate the needs of the head coach that I work for, makes me better understand what information she needs to know and which information I need to handle so that it's not more for her. I just think that I'm better able to handle the day-to-day things because nothing surprises me anymore. I can't say that I've seen it all. Anytime as a coach you say you've seen it all, somebody will do something totally weird that you're gonna be like, that's the first time that happened. But I do think that I don't react the way that I used to. I problem solve a little bit better and I take some time to step away and get after it.
How's it like obviously getting to help the hitters at Columbia?
The last year was an adjustment. So one of the best things that I ever did while I was at Seton Hall was I hired intelligent people that were smarter than me. And I was so lucky to cross the paths with great coaches like Missy Beeman and Jen Abrams, and of course, Daniel Nicolaisen, who is now in Major League Baseball. I was able to do the same thing for them that Don did for me. Give them an opportunity when maybe they weren't the best on paper, but they were passionate. They wanted to learn, and they did something that I, at the time, did not do well. So Missy Beeman connected with athletes during a time in my career where I was so ready to be a head coach that I missed that piece. I put too many layers between me and the athletes, and Missy Beeman, when we were super successful, she filled that for me. Colin Christensen did the same thing. I was able to hire somebody that was a graduate assistant at Tennessee. And then Daniel Nicolaisen is the best hitting brain I have ever been around in my life. I still need a translator when I talk to him. So I would say that learning through all those people gave me the ability to be ready to become a hitting coach. But last year, where I made a mistake is I'm used to working with athletes 5 and 6 days a week. The Ivy League is a little bit different, and I skipped some important steps. So I'm excited to see our athletes really break out this year. They're really doing well. They're handling failure well. They're getting after practices that are really different, really challenging. And the level of energy on the team is just better because we prepared them better.
How's that jump been like, obviously making that jump from just regular Division I to the Ivy League?
Remember how I said as a coach, I always hired people smarter than me? Now I coach people smarter than me. So I'm never remotely the smartest person in the room. So I have to make sure that I know everything that I'm doing. I have to be very structured. All things that are helpful to me because our athletes expect it because that's how they are in their lives. It's very rare that you get somebody at the Ivy League level who didn't get there without a plan to get there. So if you show up at practice and you're like, okay, so rain pushed us back 45 minutes, so we're just going to wing it. There is nothing that an Ivy League athlete hates more than winging it. So I spent a lot of time explaining why before we do things. And I actually just think women in general do better when they know why. But with the Ivy League athlete, it's different. So the other thing that I love about them is that you don't have to explain balance to them because they have it. I haven't come across an Ivy League athlete yet, right? And again, I've only been here a year and a half. So I'm making the same mistake I said that I don't make, is saying I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to see it, I'm sure. But I haven't come after the one yet that defines themselves only as a softball player, like where their batting average in a weekend is how they feel about themselves for the next week. So they do different things, like they're part of different clubs. The freedom in our schedule gives them the ability to do that. They're going to be like agents of change. They're involved in different things on campus because they're allowed to. We have people in sororities. I have never coached a team that has people in sororities. So it's just the schedule gives more flexibility to them, but don't count us out because it doesn't mean we're not working. We're just not working with coaches. And in my experience as a coach, one of the biggest mistakes that we make and that I made it young is thinking that I was more important than I am. They do more and they get more growth if you give them a path and then allow them to drive the car.
Of course, what does a typical game day look like as a coach and a player at Columbia?
It's a little bit different for us. Our main campus is about 100 blocks away from our softball field. So the girls, for every practice and every game, they get on a charter bus, a gorgeous, typically Mercedes charter bus, and they head up next to the West Side Highway with views of the George Washington Bridge, and they get 25 minutes of team time. They get 25 minutes to go over a scouting report if they choose to, 25 minutes to listen to their favorite music, 25 minutes to catch up with their teammates before they get to their locker room. They get to their locker room, there's always the meal of their choice that they have sent me on a spreadsheet a week prior that is lined up for them in number order. And they eat their meal and they think about their goals. Or if they're not that person, they eat their meal and they think about their French toast sticks. I don't know. They arrive on the field 2 hours prior to the game. And then from that point, we don't stop. The thing that defines our team is the energy that we bring. So that's what I love about this team.
How's it been like, obviously, getting to coach in the Ivy League and getting to coach some of those teams like Princeton, Yale, Harvard?
Well, you just named 3 very good teams. So I think that when you're going against Harvard, you're going against one of the best coaches in the game who's like proven that she's a winner year after year, decade after decade. So I'm over there taking notes, not just on how we beat them, but on how I get better. So hats off to Coach Allard. Now, when you're talking about Princeton, I think that there's not a coach out there that competes harder, than Lisa. She's fantastic. And she does it as a mom. So again, I'm taking notes because I'm a new mom. I'm trying to figure out how she can do it, but I'm guaranteed that if there's somebody who will push you over to win a game as a kid, it's going to be that coach, because Lisa is crazy competitive and I just love how she brings that out of her athletes. But the 2 teams play very different. In my 1-year experience, it seems like, Princeton kind of plays with their jerseys on fire. They don't stop running and they are looking to take everything that you give them. And they're scrappy. And Harvard is smart, and they show up to a field knowing that they're going to win. So I think Yale, I don't really know. They're under a new coach this year, so I'll take another year to talk more about them. I don't really remember that series quite as much as I remember the other 2, but there was just a different energy that our team brought against both Princeton and Harvard, and a lot that I can learn as a coach from both those programs.
Of course, as a coach, what is it like, obviously, getting to take the field and helping lead them to obviously win those games against those big teams?
There's nothing better. I tell people that I win for a living, and that's why I got into it. I became addicted to growth, and I do think that that's sometimes why, again, why you have to take some time away if you get too involved in just the winning. And you start to define yourself by your record, and you start to change either your ethics or, where you need to put your time and how you feel good about yourself at the end of the day. The 3 months that I took off were really easy for me to sit back and be like, where I missed is the connection with the athletes. They say that everybody needs a bad guy, even if you're a good guy. And I spent too much time being the bad guy when I am a good guy, and becoming an assistant coach again, and under the leadership of Coach Teague, and having her trust in me has been all the difference. So what does it mean being a part of those wins? I'm actually not that much a part of them, because coaches are not that important, but it means everything to me when you have an athlete who spent a week and a half, learning how to move her body to hit a drop ball. And then in a game, she finally hits a drop ball. And then as a coach, you sit and you cross your fingers and you hope for the double clap point that your kid might give you if they're on the base. But where a lot of coaches make the mistake is they don't wait for the athletes to allow them to be a part of that win. And instead they say, look at what I did, and they take the win away from the athlete, right? It drives me nuts when you have a pitching coach that says, I struck out 8 batters. Well, no, you never actually touched the ball. You called a great game, but your pitcher did those things. And the minute you start stealing the wins from them, they start to lose trust in you, because if you're stealing the wins from them, you're probably also blaming the losses on them. And you can't do one without the other.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've helped build for Columbia softball?
We're building it every day. Culture is constant. So I can't say there's never a culture with an ED at the end of it. We're building it every day. Actually, just this week, I'm sure you're going to start seeing it on our social media. So I don't want to be a spoiler alert. We did a lot of work as coaches and sitting down and finding out what makes our team great, what are our non-negotiables, right? So that when we go out and we're recruiting athletes and we're talking about who we are, it's very easy. And our athletes, if they ever get asked, what are your guiding principles as a program? What are your must-haves? That our athletes are able to come up with the same verbiage as us, because that is something that I am sure you will find at Harvard, and I'm sure you will find at Princeton. I'm sure you'll find at Oklahoma, right? All of the great programs have everything defined that is important to them, and then they find the people that fit them rather than finding a talented athlete and molding them. It's much easier to teach the game of softball than it is to teach somebody to adhere to your principles.
What does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college softball?
All right here, I hope that there are a ton of travel ball coaches listening. Put your GPAs on your profile sheet. So that's the first thing. One of the biggest differences that I'm still working through and finding out more about is that I can't sit at a game unless there's athletes that have a 4-point plus GPA. There's no point for me even to sit there. I don't care if you hit 500 and, you know, your extra base per hit is like through the roof. Like, if I can't get you into school, it's a waste of both of our time. So a lot of times when we're building out our schedule, we know exactly what games we're sitting at based upon the videos that were sent to us and if they had a GPA and or test score. So I know with COVID, test scores, you know, maybe you have them, maybe you don't. I know a lot of the Ivies are test optional for at least another year. We're looking through our 2024 class on that. So that's the first thing is I can't even sit at your game if I don't know your GPA. Like you can send me a highlight reel of 1 million home runs. I can't sit at your game. So that's the different part. The other part is that currently the Ivies don't adhere to the national letter of intent for the same exact reason. We're not going to sign a document saying that we're going to let you come into our amazing university, number 3 in the country, and then take the chance that you don't get in. So we send out things called a likely letter, which means if you continue doing what you're doing, you are likely to get in. I will say this though too, Teague is really good at a lot of things and she has yet to have somebody not get in that got a likely letter. So she's crushing it in terms of our communication, but it's a little bit different with the Ivies. I understand that there's some stuff down the pipe, you know, with some lawsuits out there that might change that, and we're here for it. You know, we're going to adjust.
What does the official visit look like for those prospective student athletes coming to Columbia?
All right, this is amazing. So I just came off of doing a couple of these, and we're getting a little bit better now that, again, the COVID restrictions in New York City have loosened up a little bit, and we can make sure that we do it. So everything that we want to show them who we are. We want to maximize the amount of time that they have with our student athletes, because our athletes are our best representation of as us as coaches, right? So, you know, you might not get like 3 fancy dinners with coaches because, you know, that's not showing our athletes, you know, and not showing off what we do best, which is the creation and giving a safe place for our athletes to fail and become who they are. So, you know, somebody's going to come in, they might get 4 hours to be handed off from player to player to player, you know, throughout a day. And then eventually they'll get a tour of campus. They'll get a tour of our amazing athletic facilities. We've done, I would say, I don't want to throw a number out there that's not right, but we have done a lot of upgrades. We've done a fully turfed field with a dirt circle. We've added our outfield fence and we've added a press box just since I've been there and fully replaced the batting cages. So I would say that we were probably close to $1 million in upgrades in the last 3 years. You know, so we like to show that off. You know, we're definitely going to get them down to New York City. So one of the best things about going to a school in the, you know, the New York area is the chance to get to utilize the city. So now whether that is because you just love live music and you want to go to live music when you have time, or more likely than not, you want to get an internship that's paid and that's competitive and that is going to lead you to your job. You know, there's a reason why our graduates graduate directly into high paying jobs. They have the access to the places that pay a lot of money right here to get to know them. And then the freedom of our schedule, right, allows them opportunities to actually do internships while they're in their undergrad, where that's something that, you know, even at my former school, which was 40 minutes from New York City, was not always possible because we're working out 6 days a week in the fall.
What is it like, obviously, as an assistant coach, seeing them get to put on that Columbia blue jersey and fall in love with the colors and even wear it for the next 4 years?
First of all, nobody looks bad in Columbia blue. Like it's great. It's fantastic. I am convinced that you can't put a person in Columbia blue who doesn't immediately elevate. So I see that you're rocking Columbia blue right now. So you know, it's amazing just to see them to grow. Like it seems like everybody gets an inch taller when they get into our uniform. You know, we're a Nike school as well. So, I mean, they do a really good job fitting the female body as well. Because, you know, softball is like chess. We have all different players, all different sizes and shapes that move in all different directions. And so I like to tell everybody that baseball is checkers and softball is chess. And, you know, I just think that, I mean, the Columbia blue is just amazing. And I can't even tell you, like, the dads typically, like, that tear up the minute they see their child, you know, dressed, standing, waiting for the game to start. Like, it's a moment that I hope to have as a parent as well.
What advice would you give those high school athletes looking to play college softball?
Oh, so many things. I like to tell, if I'm ever at like a high school event, I'll tell the whole group to close their eyes and to imagine somebody who is just terrible at school. And then I'll ask them to give me some attributes that person with straight Fs might have. And a lot of times you'll hear the athletes, the young high school athletes and even like middle school, they'll say things like, you know, they don't have good time management, which is awesome when you hear like a 13-year-old say time management, or they'll say they're lazy or they don't care, right? And then I'll tell them to keep their eyes closed and imagine somebody who has straight A's. And immediately what you hear is, well, that's going to be an athlete who manages her time, right? Who excels at things, who like cares more than the average person. So then I tell them to open their eyes and I tell them, okay, so when you send your emails to us, we have no idea what you look like. We have no idea. We haven't been to a game of yours yet, but we have two things. We know that you play softball and we have your GPA. And so I tell them a lot, like your GPA says a lot about you, right? It really does. Now, we're not looking for perfection in that, and I don't want that to be the message that people hear is that you have to have a 4.0. The Ivy Leagues are looking for the fact that you're also challenging yourself. So if you have a 3.8 and you're taking 5 AP courses, right? That is also telling us that you're somebody who's challenging yourself and you're excelling by challenging yourself. But so that's what I like to tell high school athletes is that, put your time in your academics more so than your athletics, and that you can be great at both. Don't tell yourself the lie that it's a sliding scale, that the more time you put in softball, the less you have for academics, because that's not a lie. When you get to Division I athlete, like you are a full-time employee of two jobs. You are a full-time softball player, you are a full-time student. And if you don't excel at either one of those, you're going to get fired. So high school does prepare for that if you do it the right way.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are looking to play professionally, whether it's Athletes Unlimited or for the U.S. team?
I don't have as much background in professional sports, so I try not to speak on things that I don't know about. Have sent athletes to different levels of professional softball in the past. There's a handful of them. I would say that the best thing that they did was they found ways over the summer to make the connections, if you're not already in a Power 5, to make the connections with the Power 5 coaches and the Power 5 players. So I've had some great athletes that have gone on to play professionally both overseas and here that found ways to do that. Or I'm happy to pick up the phone and call. I've had more recently, Major League Baseball is trying to pull from the softball community. I like to say it's because we can do more with less, and, tend to be a little bit more imaginative because we haven't had as much. And I would say to break into professional coaching or to the professional sports, like there's no better place than New York City, just because we're proximity of 7 professional sports of all different, football, basketball, even recently the Mets have gotten good enough that we can call them a professional team again. So now it's the Nets that are like, I don't really know, they might be minor league. So I think that proximity to the people that you need to make connections with is very important, and making sure that when you do that, that you are what you say you are.
What advice would you give those future assistant coaches and even head coaches looking to get started in coaching college softball?
Anybody looking to get started, it's important to win first and to be around people that you really love and you care about, because you're going to spend more time with them than you will your family. So coaching is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And it's something that everybody in your village needs to be aware of, because, like Daniel and I, so Daniel Nicolaisen with the Cardinals now, we've always put quotes out, but I have a game, right? So your best friend's getting married, but you have a game, right? There are things in life that happen, but as a head coach, and most of the time as an assistant coach, you can't not show up for your team, because that's also your family, which makes your job your lifestyle. So that's something that you need to be honest with the people in your life about, and honest with yourself about, because it's very hard to excel in any other way. Now, am I telling you not to go to that wedding? No, I'm not. But am I telling you that you won't be able to go to as many? I am. I get invited to a lot of players' weddings, and I've been to 3. It's just one of those things. Like, I can't go to all of them because I've got a game, and I'm not going to ask them to reschedule. So I think that that's first and foremost, understanding that, to be successful, it's a lifestyle. The second part is you need to market yourself in the way that you're marketing yourself for the job that you want, not the one that you have. There are very few jobs that don't pay their apprentice, and softball is one of those. So starting into a volunteer assistant job, again, important to win early. So you want to be a volunteer assistant at a program that's going to win, right? Because that's the first thing that people are looking at on your resume, and you're not going to get paid. So you have to love it. And from there, hopefully you continually move on, and you always, always, always network yourself. When you go to events like the NFCA, it's a job interview, right? It's not a place to just cut up and be crazy like you're in college again. It's a job interview, and people remember you, and you want them to remember the right things. So I wish somebody had told me that when I was 24 as a head coach. So, I just think that those are the main things. Win early, make sure that you're always on a job interview, and find a way to connect with the athlete and just never stop learning.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the Columbia softball program?
This is where my players make fun of me. I don't have Instagram. They say because I'm old, or maybe I say that and then they laugh when I say that. So I don't have Instagram. I do have Twitter. I'm one of the people who likes to learn on Twitter. So I'm on it all the time, mostly just looking for new drills that I think can challenge us. There's a lot of smart people out there if you know where to look and you know how to filter out the people who think they know it all. And so on Twitter, you can find me. I think I'm Coach Smith 2121. I don't know. There's very few Paige Smiths that are in coaching, so you can probably just find a way to search that as well. And that's really it for me. I don't do the TikTok. I'm just not there yet. I hope I won't be there because it's just more time I'm taking away from my athletes if I'm there.
Thank you again, Coach Paige Smith, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Columbia softball program.
Thank you, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Paige Smith, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
All right, thank you, Brandon.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.